I want to go back to the book because, you know, Rastafari in the 21st century. And I want to touch on one of the first characters you know, one of the first elders that you think in the book. Shepherd Alexander Bedward. Now, if ever there was a character that or an individual that has been mischaracterized by the Jamaican society, it has to be Alexander Bedward. And, you know, I have to tell you, gentlemen, that you know, Rasta on the inside, but a ballad on the outside. Eh? But I never looked at the thing in the same context. I feel like I lose my microphone. Now, Bedward. Let's talk about Bedward and Bedward's impact on Rastafari as extracted from the book. Priest.
Well,
go on.
Well, first of all, you know, you talk about why Jamaicans #1 and then people in general should get this book. Because there's a lot of things that they don't know about their own history and themselves that we have in this book. And Alexander Bedward is the classic example of that. And that is why we started this whole volume with a history and outline of Bedward. The thing that Jamaicans, all of us as youth, we hear about Bedward. He was a madman who tried to jump off of a tree. That's all we hear. But now, in fact, Bedward was one of the first black nationalists, one of the first people promoting the Garth thing of self-help, economic self-help, self-pride. All of these things, the music he had, they talk about pucko music and all of these music. These were African drummers who were part of the Bedward movement from the late 1800s, coming into the early 1900s, pre-Marcus Garvey, but setting the stage for Marcus Garvey. And a lot of the first generation Rastafari, they were Bedwardites before they were Rasta. They were Bedwardites before they became Garveyites, because a lot of them were also Garveyites. And this was the mindset of these elders that we speak of in the book and of Rastafari. And in that, Bedward was villainized, mischaracterized. He was sent to the madhouse. He was sent to prison. People have all kind of little stories about him to tell. It's the same kind of dirt them throw on Rastafari. So he's like the prototype beard man in Jamaica. So religiously and also politically.
Yes. When we were talking about the you know, beard man and there was a term as a youngster where you old people them use the term black art man to frighten the youngsters. This is where this kind of characterization is drawn from. And so Rasta, it appears, well, it's clear to me now, having started reading this book, that this is where this whole thing is centered from. And it has fed into this misconception, because here we are, we praise Rasta for the music. I mean, we just don't talk about the kind of shots where the selector just draw for. And these are some champion sounds tear down the place all over the world. But it's Rasta music. So we only accept one aspect of the culture, but in terms of the levity, you tear it down. And I guess one of the first things about tearing down a culture is if you can change all the narrative of the history. And, you know, and that happens when we don't write our own history. And so from that perspective, I'm saying to you guys, you know, this is an amazing piece of work. We begin to own our history when we write it ourselves. And I would like to say that, you know, in terms of the whole concept, the whole principles and the doctrine of Rastafari, this is a work that could never have been more timely. Priest, let me hear from you.
Yeah, why is that important? Why is someone like Bedward important? You know, what's the symbolism and the real significance of Bedward? You know, most people don't understand the fullness of that aspect. Wherein Bedward was one of the first defenders of the poor and the have-not, you know, of the independence of the poor and the have-not. See, trying to educate the people coming out of slavery and the colonial era, giving the people back a sense of pride, a sense of who they are. See, while doing that, standing up against the status quo, the plantocracy, those that inherited what we would call today the neo-colonial power, those who inherited the colonial power. He was the first to come out against them outrightly as an Afrocentric person. And he was an independent man. He never just talk. See, he taught the people self-reliance. He built the first camp. We always talk of Pinnacle as being the first successful Rastafari encampment. But no, Bedward's Union Camp at Augustown predated Pinnacle. You know, what we know about that is the little folklore, what them talk about in Jamaica about heal them, Bedward, heal them, dip them in the healing stream.
Right.
All right. That aspect of it was true. Bedward was a master herbalist as well. And he understood the power of the mineral water, how healing it was for people with certain infirmities. So not only was he an activist, a preacher, but he was a healer. So he was a great threat to the system. And if anyone know the history, both the hospital, the church, and the government concocted his whole demise. He threatened the 3 levels of establishment that run the place at them time. See, church and state, and the medical system. Why? It is said that a lot of people, instead of going to UC and to the clinic, them started to go to Augustown, to Bedward. People came from as far as Costa Rica, Panama. Now, nobody taught us these things. Nobody taught us that his craftsmen built one of the most beautiful rock churches of that era. It is written there, it's in our history. And when it was being spoken about, it was being hailed as one of the phenomena of the Western Hemisphere, not just the little island of Jamaica, but in the whole Western Hemisphere, because this was a rock church. And you know how we build our rock wall them at Jamaica and our rock building them.
No mortar, no cement.
And when we do it, it looks well built, so magnificent. Well, the man and built an entire church out of that, showing their skill sets. They grew their own food and then practiced preventative medicine. They were the first self-sufficient gathering that came out of slavery. See, so the status quo had to beat that down. They couldn't make that become a sample where people know, say, yo, you know, as a community, we can rise up and working together, we can become self-sufficient. We don't have to look to big government, like how we are taught and how we depend on them today. Because today, if you go through Jamaica, in some neighborhood, I see my brethren in Montego Bay live on this street with pure big house. Females massive too. Pure big house. But when I drive in, go there, I drop in a some sinkhole. That is not even pothole. Some sink. And them there, and they're waiting on the government to repair it. And them waiting, and his years I go there, and years the road stays up. Now for I would come together with the rest of my neighbors, put some funds together and fix up my road, because it's I live on the road there. It's I the road they serve. See? But because we are taught to look to big government for everything, okay, we sit and we wait. Now, that is where Rastafari come in. Rastafari teaches you a self-reliant philosophy, coming from Marcus Garvey's teaching. The Honorable Prophet taught us self-reliance. And he did that by example, not by word, so not by taking the pulpit, okay, by action. You understand? He opened supermarkets, rooming houses, bakeries, all kinds of establishments. But the greatest of all was when he purchased the Black Star Line shipping company, see, to move goods and people back and forth across the ocean. See, in those days, that was considered to be disrespectful.
Like-
We're stepping out our line.
Like buying an airline.
Or like what our brethren here in Miami tried to do on Miami Beach by building a hotel amongst the Jews, you know, the Hebrew Israelite brethren,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
you know, and they mash him down. You understand? And find a reason for lock him up. Anytime a black man or a person of color
Yeah.
rise beyond a certain level, them try to stem us
It's
because they
called-
don't want that to be an example. Go
You're
ahead, my brother.
stepping out of line.
Hi there. If you enjoyed that clip, go on over to our website at yardmedia.com where you can watch the entire broadcast at your leisure. And while you're there, why don't you check out our other reggae music features? And before you leave, pick up some of our Jamaican reggae merchandise, and hey, don't forget to tell your friends.
My name is Garth, otherwise known as Big G.
My name is Richie Blackford.